Hey, Next Levelers, Bob Gibbons here for the Next Level Show. Glad to have you with us. We're here to learn again about entrepreneurship and why people start companies, how they've done it, things they've overcome, and how they've built something great to create jobs and improve the lives of their customers. So today I'm excited we have Mike Kinder. Mike is the founder and CEO of a company called Veryable or Veryable. First one, yeah. Veryable. That's right. But it's spelled Veryable. So Veryable Inc., and you can find them online, by the way, at variableops.com. And again, that's Veryableops.com, variableops.com. And they're based in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and they're doing some really interesting things with technology, manufacturing, employment. I'm not going to give too much away, but welcome to the show, Mike. Glad to have you with us.
Oh, thanks, Bob. Appreciate it.
So Veryable, you have a very unique name, and therefore I'm guessing that there's a good story behind that name.
Yeah, oh yeah, the story is the domain name for the proper spelling of variable is already taken. So we had to go with the,
Isn't that always the case?
Funkier spelling. No, that's partly the case. But no, really we were looking at more just an optimistic name, one that was going to signal what we're all about.
I like that.
So we ended up there, and we're pleased with it. We get a lot of compliments on that, actually.
So give us the rundown. What's your quick? Somebody comes up to you at a party and says, "So what do you do?" How do you answer that in a succinct way?
Well, I say what we're trying to do is usher in digital manufacturing mainstream, and we're trying to pretty much upend some of the practices that let manufacturers or prevent manufacturers from getting more competitive in today's environment. So we're bringing a new tool to market, and one that gives not just manufacturers a helpful tool, but the labor market as well.
Interesting. So that's a big statement to try to enable through technology manufacturers. So that can go a million different ways, right? So does that mean that your tool is controlling their production processes and the machines, or is it more on the labor, or what exactly is it touching?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we're focused on labor, but I think broadly we're focused on operational flexibility. So here's what happens. You get, if there's any manufacturing folks listening right now, you'll understand this. Labor, for most businesses, is a functional bottleneck. So it's your primary functional constraint. So when you look at how much product you can produce or how much product you can distribute, labor is going to be what determines how much. So technically, capacity is going to be defined by your fixed assets, but very few cases do actually find that to be the case. So equipment isn't really what's limiting what you can produce. It's headcount. So even though labor is technically a variable cost, it functions more like a fixed cost. So, you're not hiring and firing people all the time. You're doing this on, 13, 26-week increments. You're trying to plan 3 to 6 months out. So you're predetermining how much production capacity that you have over that period of time. And the fact of the matter is the market doesn't behave that way. So why we exist is, I'm looking out at the landscape, and I'll give you an example. My wife right now, she's buying diapers on Amazon. Right? 2 years ago, she wasn't doing that.
And she's doing that on a just-in-time basis?
Yeah, pretty much, exactly, right? And so, everybody listening, I imagine, does this, where you're on Amazon, you're buying anything you want. It's on your doorstep in 2 days.
Or
you
less.
can buy blue sneakers with yellow laces and things like that. It's right there. Now, in the industrial B2B space, that's not how it works, right? So if you wanted to buy a $500 compressor for your job site, you got to wait 16 weeks, and maybe there's only 2 types, right?
My.
So, but it's not because the manufacturer of the compressor has, real tough barriers on flexibility. It's usually just because flexing headcount isn't a realistic proposition.
Okay.
So what they end up doing is just extending lead times and, playing this game of orders come in hot, I spread it out, orders come in light, I pull forward. And we're trying to say, listen, no, in this environment, you got to get fast. If you don't get fast, then somebody's going to eat your lunch.
Wow. So your system, your system is really there to help manufacturers flex that workforce to meet their demand.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah, because what you'll find is when I was a consultant, I did a side analysis on just take lead time, for example. And I found over the course of or studying about 24 businesses, for every % reduction in lead time, that was a 0.5% increase in orders, assuming you have a relatively commodity type product.
Okay.
So a proprietary product, you're going to have different dynamics. So if you can bring your lead time down by cut it in half, for example, you can or increase your orders by 25%. So I'm saying, look, stop spending money on things like advertising and marketing. Your biggest revenue generating lever is operational. So do the operational things right, and you can grow your business. That's your first pass.
That's very much different than what most people think, because they think the most important thing they can do every day is to continue to get the word out, so to speak, to market, to advertise, to, all I need is people saying they want my stuff. I'll be able to deliver it to them, no problem. I just got to get them interested. They don't really think about the other side of, hey, I got to manufacture this thing efficiently, quickly, and all that to get it to them. So you're saying start with that, operations, manufacturing, and not with the marketing. That seems counterintuitive.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say you start there. I would say it's easier to sell and market if you're doing the operational things right. Okay. And often it's the lowest friction play. So you can market the hell out of.
You're okay.
I'm sorry. Okay. You can market the hell
out of. It's not one
of
the 7.
You can market the hell out of something that that you're slow to market with. That's 16 weeks lead time, and you're going to get this diminishing return because people are going to balk at that, or they're going to walk away. They're going to renege on an order because it's taking too long. It's kind of like when you're in a grocery store and there's 4 lanes open. You're always going to go to the lowest, the shortest lane.
Right.
And you do that because you're pretty much indifferent on how that works. So if you're buying if you're a construction company and you're buying pumps or blowers or generators or something like that, I doubt you really care too much whether you have a Siemens, or a GE or an Atlas Copco or any of these products. You just need it. Like you need it when you need it, because that job site is, that time period is pretty tight, and you need that product there, you need the equipment there, and then you're on to the next thing.
So it sounds like what you're really saying is that manufacturers need to have a system in place that they can actually deliver in a timely manner what they are selling to their customers. Because if their customers don't believe they can really deliver it, or if you don't deliver it in time, that order's gone and they're going to the next supplier.
Yeah, absolutely. And I call this operations as a competitive advantage. So, you think about supply chain in the same way. So good operations companies, good operators, they think about supply chain and operations as a competitive advantage. And if you're fast, if you're really fast, you have a massive advantage in the marketplace, really. And I think what I'm finding, at least in the way that the industry is evolving right now, speed wins. And if you're not committed to getting faster, you're going to lose. And if you're not playing offense today, you're just going to be forced to play defense.
And a speed with reliability that you're talking about, because if you're not reliable, then you have no speed.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, what good is that? So your product, your service is, you said, labor-focused, not the machinery-focused per se. So how does your product work?
Well, it's a two-sided marketplace. So we have mobile apps for our term for a worker on the platform is an operator. And the operators have mobile apps. And they're notified when any business posts work. And they're discrete work opportunities. So they may last, a couple hours. They may just be a certain task. They may last a week. They may last a couple of weeks. It depends. It depends on the needs of the business. And really the whole concept is about fractionating the landscape.
Yeah.
So where the inefficiencies lie is in the two fixed sides of the equation. So if I've got somebody who's a job seeker, what that means is they have maybe 40 hours a week to commit on a specific kind of period of time, like 8 to 5 every day for 5 days. And then a business over here has to hold that time open and say, okay, then I've got to commit to 40 hours of production in that window. But in many cases, that's a suboptimal equation for both sides. So we're trying to fractionate the landscape, and we're not trying to cannibalize everything. What we're saying is that And it's probably about 20% of all manufacturing work doesn't function well as a job because it's not fixed. Most of that top portion of demand is highly variable. And I'm looking at the landscape of the labor force, and I'm going, we're moving in a great degree to a freelancer model. Mm-hmm. And there are real constraints out there that are driving that. So we've got a lot of single moms on our platform who have real commitments during the week, but they've got labor to give, just not in a predictable
not in the
fashion.
8 to 5.
Right.
Yeah.
It can be a couple days a week. It can be in the evenings. It can be on third shift. It could be various times. And then businesses don't always know what their requirements are either. So, if you go ask a 3PL right now, what is your Monday?
Third-party logistics,
right,
for those that don't know what that is.
Yeah. If you ask a 3PL, what is your, let's say, production schedule, or whatever they call it, for on Monday next week? You're going to say, I don't know. I mean, I kind of know. Maybe I know 60% of it, but I don't know everything. It's like, right. Well, then how do you account for the rest of that unknown by staffing it up as a job? You just can't. So we're attracting a ton of talent on the supply side from those people that have the real constraints. One of the things I really like, we got a guy down in Houston on the platform. I remember him because this was early on. A skilled machinist, about 26 years old, and he said, Mike, I can't have a job because I've got a YouTube channel. So he does this YouTube channel on Mondays and Wednesday mornings. And I'm going, well, you're a skilled machinist. Your opportunity cost is about $30 an hour, And he's like, well, this is important to me. So I tell business owners this a lot when they go, where are all the skilled machinists? I said, well, they have YouTube channels now.
They're on YouTube.
Right? And they said, oh, well, that's, that's absurd. That's crazy. And I go, well, no, maybe you're crazy because maybe you're not recognizing that in order to attract today's 20-year-old skilled machinist, you might have to accommodate what you think are kind of crazy constraints, but are actually real constraints.
Well, we're going to take a quick break. We will be right back after this. Welcome back to the Next Level Show. I'm Bob Gibbons, and we are talking to Mike Kinder of Veryable. Check him out online, veryableops.com. That's variableops.com. So, Mike, before the break, we were talking about your story of the 26-year-old skilled machinist who has a YouTube channel. So he obviously has a variety of interests. He doesn't want to be confined to the job of 8 to 5 every day, Monday through Friday, or the third shift, or whatever it is. And so you're creating a marketplace in which he can still get work as a skilled machinist, but not necessarily interfere with his YouTube channel or whatever else it is that he wants to do. And you're saying that really is a benefit to the manufacturer because they don't have a perfectly uniform pipeline of work to be done either.
Right.
So is that consistent among, I guess there's just that question I was about to ask is that consistent? There's nothing consistent about the manufacturing world because they're not all the same. Mm-hmm. But what percentage of this is there really going to address? You mentioned a 20% earlier. Is that 20% of all manufacturing, or what's the scale here we're talking about?
20% is a useful heuristic, but it's going to vary quite a bit. You're going to have, I would say, on the extreme variability, you've got 3PLs who are super opportunistic. You've got contract manufacturers who are also very opportunistic, a high degree of variation among the products that they build. You've got industrial products that are all make to order, high swings of demand variation. Now, on the other side, you're going to have industries like process industries, some of the downstream oil and gas, where that's more of an equipment constraint. You're not, refineries, for example, if you want to call that manufacturing, I wouldn't. But, they're not constrained by labor. They're constrained by infrastructure and the fixed assets. But there's just really not a lot of this repetitive, discrete manufacturing, low variability left in the U.S. This is the funny paradox here is a big wave of outsourcing that happened in 90s, 2000s, right? And the idea with outsourcing is a labor arbitrage, mostly.
Right, totally.
And what ended up getting outsourced is a lot of the things that have a very low cost, low labor percentage.
Yeah.
Right. So very repetitive manufacturing, discrete, let's say low product variation, things like that. So you don't get a lot of bang for your buck on the labor arbitrage. So a lot of the companies that are going back and assessing the outsourcing decisions that they made throughout those 2 decades are realizing they're not getting anywhere near the savings they thought they were, which has left in high-cost region a lot of this make-to-order, engineer-to-order, high levels of customization. Mm-hmm. And now you understand why businesses didn't want to outsource that, because it's complex, right? But it also has the biggest bang for your buck on labor as an opportunity for productivity savings, things like that. So what you'll find in high-cost regions is just a lot of that. So whenever you have a high degree of product variation and process variation, you've got a lot of unpredictability in how you need to man your plants.
So whenever you come into this idea, how did you come to this idea first? Let's hit that. What was it about your life that suddenly said, hey, I've got to create this marketplace for variable labor for manufacturers? That seems incredibly niche.
Yeah, I was fortunate in my career. So I spent the first, call it 8 years of my career with GE, and classic GE tour of duty, where I was running around from GE site to GE site every 12 to 18 months, and just front lines manufacturing. So I was leading the plants. My last GE stop was in a plant on the south side of Chicago, and that was during the recession. So I took over that plant prior to the recession, took it all the way down through and out of the recession. So a lot of hiring and firing, a lot of unpredictability. So when you manage a down cycle like that, you kind of cut in stages, and nobody likes that. It's a terrible result when you do that, because you kind of cut the first wave and you say, is that how bad it's going to get? No, and it gets worse. Then you cut the next stage, and then you cut the third. Yep. And you never quite cut where you need to cut. And, so which kind of leads you down that path of cut. And then on the upswing, you never hire back as fast as you think you should, because you never believe it, right?
Right.
I mean, when the Dow Jones was at 6,000 or something like that, we all should have poured our money in, right? But we didn't know how bad that was going to get. So that's what happens. You're kind of conservative on the cuts, and you're conservative on the upswing. And I assessed that in hindsight and said, if I was faster on the upswing, I could have just eaten my competitor's lunch. Now, why couldn't I be faster on the upswing? And it's because when you hire, you're pre-committing to a lot of future cost, So there's no flexible way to do that. So I saw it on that angle. And then I saw it again in my consulting career, where everybody was saying the same thing, especially during the political cycle. You hear a lot of workers say, I can't find jobs. I can't find a job. I go,
right.
You're a skilled welder. What do you mean you can't find a job? Yeah. Everybody wants to hire a welder, a machinist. Everybody's hiring. And like, well, but I've got these special constraints. Maybe I've got a YouTube channel, for instance. And then you hear businesses say, I can't find welders. And I say, right, because nobody can find welders.
Yeah.
Every welder that wants a job has a job. So I'll tell you how to get a welder. Go offer $200,000 right now, and you'll get a welder. But that's about how much it's going to cost you to get a welder. I'm telling you, it's insanely tight. And then, of course, the business says, well, actually, I don't need 40 hours of a welder. I need 20 hours of a welder. And then I say, you're not offering a job. So you're just complaining about the fact that you don't have a welder. Yeah. You're not offering a welding job. So I've got people on one side saying, I can't find jobs because I have these constraints. And then I've got the other side saying, I can't find the people, but yet I'm not offering a job. So fractionating the landscape was a way to do that.
Interesting. And that's been done in so many different ways, right? I mean, we used to have full-time taxi drivers. Now we have people that log on and drive for one of the car sharing services for 2 hours on a weekend, or maybe they do it all weekend or at nights. So that's been done very successfully in the car sharing business, transportation business. It's now being done in a lot of other ways. You're just doing that for labor and manufacturing, yes?
That's right. And why, I think our model, back to the optimistic theme from the beginning, why we called it variable, is what we're not doing is, using the gig economy to undercut an incumbent, like a cab driver. What we're saying is manufacturing is understaffed, and it's understaffed because of the uncertainty of demand. And just, think of how an infrastructure project works. Timing is unknown. Then the supply chain bullwhip effect kicks in, and then everybody's kind of wondering, what the next quarter is going to look like. And so my numbers are something like manufacturing is 20% understaffed. Why? Those are great jobs.
Mm-hmm.
They're awesome. Manufacturing work is great work. I mean, there's so much dignity in it. There's you're making something tangible that you can point to and say, look,
Oh, yeah.
look, I did that. And so and employers, they want to produce product. They want to be competitive. But it's the structural barrier that's holding that back. And pretty much that is the definition. It's the definition of a job is the structural barrier preventing manufacturing from being staffed to its proper level. So we're just saying, look, we're not trying to cannibalize anything. We're trying to allow these businesses to access that next 20% or even more.
Your example of the recession and how you had to lay people off in tranches and then hire them back in tranches, I see that as well. I'm in the commercial real estate business, so I represent companies that lease space or buy space for their company to operate. Mm-hmm. And so particularly in the office space, it's all driven by jobs. So the more the company is successful, the more people they need to help with their company, and they have to hire people, and they have to have a place to put them, so they lease more space. So when there's an up cycle, they lease more people, they hire more people. When it's a down cycle, they lay them off. And they do so on the downside much faster than they do on the upside.
Mm-hmm.
So we see that whenever there's a downturn in the economy, people will start laying people off fast, but whenever it starts coming back, they're very reluctant to start hiring them back as employees, particularly because they don't know, is this going to last? Is this recovery really going to be something that's going to be real? Is our demand going to be steady and maintain? And so they start hiring contract laborers or contract workers in one form or another, or they outsource things until they get that confidence. And then they start hiring people as their employees again. And as an employee, you have all the rules and regs associated with hiring them. You have all the benefits. There's all kinds of stuff that goes into that is scarier than outsourcing it or hiring somebody on a gig economy basis. Are there issues with those companies that are hiring people on the gig economy? Is there any issues with regulatory issues as far as how they treat them? I mean, are they really employees or are they not employees? I mean, is it totally clear?
Totally clear. Yeah, they're not employees. They're independent contractors.
Right.
So, I look at it this way. So everyone on our platform is an independent contractor. But I look at it this way. You make a trade-off. So if you want a job and you want to be a W-2 employee, now you may have the benefits of, let's say health insurance or something like that. And if that's important to you, great. But what it also means is that you're not very well hedged, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've seen this in my career where one of the hardest things about doing layoffs is knowing that, especially with direct labor, the folks that are making things on the shop floor, is knowing that their entire career lacks, or let's say work history lacks a continuity that's going to propel them into their next job. So not like a white collar thing where you can quote your resume and show upward progression.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody goes and says, "Hey, I was a great machinist at GE for 10 years," well, you pretty much have to take their word for it. So what we're trying to do is create a way for folks to hedge their bets. So if company X is outsourced to Mexico, well, it's like, okay, fine, I've got 20 others that I've been working with. So you no longer, control me like that.
Right.
So it's trade-offs. I would say the days, and what I've noticed too with the younger generation, especially the millennials, how risk tolerant they are. It's amazing. I mean,
it's awesome, actually.
I mean, I was going to say it wasn't that long ago since I graduated college, but it was. And I was the thing I wanted was job security. Like, give me a job and benefits. But these guys, they're way more risk tolerant to that, and they're going to say, give me more opportunity, let me hedge my bets, let me get some experience, and let the chips fall where they may. That's
excellent. So your lease is going to expire in the future, and you're trying to figure out how soon should I start working on that? Is it 6 months or a year or 2 years before my lease expiration? Well, there isn't an exact date. This is Bob Gibbons with Riata Commercial Realty, and my clients always meet with me about 2 years before their expiration date, and we create a strategy. and then we review that strategy again a year later. And so we're always working toward what's right for them, not what they think might be an arbitrary date by which they need to figure this out. The keys in determining how much time you need are whether or not you're going to move, whether or not you need to expand, will there need to be construction on wherever you're going to go to, and all those things take more time. So do a strategy meeting a couple years out with your advisor, and that'll make things a lot more clear. For more information, please go to texastenantrep.com. That's texastenantrep.com. Welcome back to the Next Level Show. We are talking to Mike Kinder of Veryable. Check him out online, variableops.com. And as you know by now, it's VERYABLEOPS.com.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, I like the idea of the millennials, younger people being more risk tolerant. They don't see their lives as being tied to a particular company. And sometimes for, older guys like me, I'm in my 50s, that looks weird. I look at somebody's resume and they've jumped jobs every year or two, or more often even, and it scares me. I'm thinking, do I want that kind of person around? And yet I also have children that are that age. And one of my kids once told me, I don't want to wait until my retirement to do all my traveling. I want to spread my retirement over my entire life so I can enjoy it at all ages. Mm-hmm. You can't do that too effectively if you're stuck in an 8-to-5 job with 2 weeks of vacation a year after the first year or 2 or 3. You're very limited. The gig economy says, hey, I'll work when I want. I travel when I want. That's incredibly appealing even to an old guy. And that's what you're really offering in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think that's a big component.
At least on the employee side or the, quote, contractor side.
Yeah, and let me add another thing, too, because, I mean, that's really true for, where you see the big gig economy hitting in, like, tech work, the development and design, all the app design. I mean, a lot of these guys are freelancers now.
Yeah.
And that's kind of their mindset is, why tie myself down? I can make plenty of money freelancing, and my skills determine what my marketability and my earning power is going to be. So I'm pretty much fine. But I think it works at another level too for blue collar work, and it's addressing the skills gap. So you hear everybody talk about the skills gap, and it's like how do we turn more millennials into welders? That type of thing. And every government group is busy on the case trying to figure out how to crack this code. And I'm more pragmatic about it. I think if you get a good athlete who wants to learn, you put them right there and let them learn on the job.
Yeah. That's
how you do it. Now, there are a couple skills like welding where you do need some training, but machine operation, assembly, test and inspection, a lot of the stuff that's really common, the more common work out there, learn on the job.
Yeah.
So my point of view is this. You don't turn somebody into a welder overnight, like a 17-year-old. What you have to do is you have to build competencies, and you have to build the foundational competencies. So if I'm 17, I just graduated high school, and I'm going, look, I want to work with my hands. I want to work in a manufacturing environment. Well, the first thing you have to know is actually how to conduct yourself in an industrial environment. It's not how do I operate a weld torch. No, it's how do I find my way around an environment like this without knocking into a crane, or how do I, how can I work safely? The second thing is, have you ever taken direction from anybody in your life? Have you ever had a supervisor tell you to do something and you follow those directions? That's not an easy step. You have to learn what that's like to take direction, follow direction, interpret drawings, things like that. So there are these foundational competencies that these guys, have to learn before you can put a weld torch in their hands so they can be productive. So that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to create, I call it the skills economy. We're trying to create this upward mobility that can take into, or that can go into effect quickly if you do good work and you build these competencies incrementally. And what we've noticed on our platform is the ones that do really well in like a warehousing environment, an assembly environment, they're given the opportunity to operate machinery and equipment for $20 an hour. And if they're a 5-star rated person, businesses will look at that and go, a 5-star person will figure it out. Yeah. Like if you have a track record for doing everything right so far in a warehouse, on the assembly line, here, I'm going to put you in front of this slitter machine or this lathe. you're going to figure it out.
Yeah.
And you're going to figure it out pretty quick. But this is how it actually works. I've run plants for a lot of my career, and that's how training works. It's not HR paperwork. That's not how people learn. People learn by standing next to somebody for however long it takes, watching how they do it, and replicating. It's train the trainer type stuff.
Yeah.
That's how it works. Everybody knows that. And the people that are really close to the action in manufacturing, they know that's exactly how people learn. So we're just saying, be honest about that.
Yeah.
Get people right to the point of use. They'll learn on the job.
And of course, they're only going to be given that chance when they've proven themselves in some other way. So I tell people all the time, especially young people who are looking for a job, get out there in front of people, go meet them, go interview them, ask them, hey, you're an expert in whatever industry you're trying to get into. Can I just come interview you? Because you want to have that personal connection. If you don't have the personal connection and all they see is a resume online, they're going to assume you don't know anything and you can't do whatever it is they need. But as soon as you meet them, they see how smart you are, the questions you're asking, the skills that you're able to communicate verbally and in writing. Now they're all of a sudden going to say, hey, this is a pretty sharp kid. I'm going to give her an opportunity that I wouldn't have if I hadn't met her in person. And in your platform, the thing I like is, once somebody gets into the plant and they start doing something, then the supervisor, whomever, is going to see something that they can do and give them another opportunity. But that actually don't even have to be in the plant, because now you're saying you've got reviews. And so now that company reviews that person's performance. Now the next manufacturer can say, oh, I know that they can do what I want because, this other company has already told me they can by the review.
Bingo. And this is, I cannot stress enough how important this is. So I'll give you an example of what used to happen in any of my plants. So if I was ever hiring for a blue-collar job, warehouse, assembly, test and inspection, something like that, people would come in, they'd have the resume. And I'd look at this and go, okay, Bob, looks like you worked 10 years at Larry's warehouse and 10 years here. You can't really source those references. If you tried calling Larry's warehouse, they're going to say, I'm not going to say anything.
They won't talk to you.
So what you're left with, because the resume for this, for this particular type of work, the resume is so unreliable, what you're left with is a character interview. And you're just saying, do I trust Bob enough to work in my site? Do I think, Bob's going to steal from me? No? Okay. Do I think Bob's going to learn and grow in this environment and take direction? So it's a really risky proposition because you're trying to do that in an interview. You're just making a character judgment. So it's the unreliability of the resume that makes this space a bit, a high friction environment on the hiring and firing. And so here's some cool stats. On our platform right now, our breakdown between men and women is like 55-45.
Nice.
So nearly a 50-50 split. The racial demographics I think in the manufacturing sector right now, it's something like 77% white. We're about 50% or 45% white, and it has a really nice curve across the racial demographics. Age, our average age is 31. The average age in manufacturing is like 49. So it's younger, it's more diverse. And I think here's why, and this is a hypothesis, but I think this has some truth to it. At the very least, it's somewhat true, is how did I get around that challenge of the unreliable resume? Well, here's how I do it. I would find my best employee out in the shop, and I'd say, hey, Janusz, you have any brothers? You have any uncles, cousins? Okay. And then if he did, I'd interview them.
Yeah.
And then I'd go to the next, and I'd go on down the line. So there's this embedded nepotism that happens in this space because of the unreliability of the resume. Mm-hmm. And if you think about how infrequently the workforce changes over in manufacturing, you have people in manufacturing that work 40 or 50 years. That's actually pretty common.
Right.
And so if you're drawing out of the same pool over the course of a couple of generations, you're actually left with some pretty tough entry barriers, right? Because getting into that space requires somebody that's already in that space.
Got to know somebody.
So it's no surprise to me that when we level the playing field with facts and say, interview comes secondary to this demonstrated track record, this track record of 5-star ratings. This person has shown at every stop, rated by the companies, that they've done great work. You have every reason to believe that's going to translate into your environment. So any other factor, any other bias, that's going to be secondary because you know the reality of it. So I really like that about our platform, and it just shows how when you introduce the objectivity, the objective evidence here, then the playing field gets leveled and it works out better for everybody.
Well, you're democratizing
That's right.
the labor force.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the cool thing. You start taking away biases from that. I know Uber and Lyft, for example, actually specifically Uber, there were some professors that took all the Uber data to try and figure out if there was a gender bias in what people got paid. And once you correct or account for, adjust for things like who's willing to work at 3 a.m. on a Saturday night with a bunch of drunks and who's not, who's willing to take the choice assignments, the bad assignments, works a lot longer, not. Anyway, you adjust for all these factors that are not consistent, and there is absolutely no difference in what people get paid as drivers for Uber. And that's cool because it's democratizing things, and I think it shows that when people get good service, they're willing to pay for it equally, regardless of any of those underlying factors that history would tell us that we are biased against. So I like that your platform is doing that. So the manufacturers get to grade, review the people that are the workers, the operators you call them. Do the operators get to review the manufacturers?
Yeah, they do. That's not a required step. So it's required that a business rates the operator.
Okay.
But the operator has an option to rate the business.
Okay.
So, 50-50 on whether that happens. I think usually, like in many optional ratings, it's mostly biased towards the bad experiences. But no, it is important because you would think the idea is, pardon, the idea is if both sides are represented correctly by the collective opinion of the marketplace, then their ability to price their work, either what they're offering or what they're offering on both sides, will clear. So you may have a business that gets terrible reviews but might pay well.
Yeah.
And the person that would be interested in that would go in eyes wide open, knowing that that's what to expect. And we don't intervene on that. We just say, look, hey, if it's maybe, let's say it's hot, or dusty, or there's a supervisor that's a little bit obnoxious, go into it knowing that, and take your $25 an hour, and there you go.
Let's be happy. All right, we're going to take one last break. Be right back.
Don't miss the 7th Annual Code Launch Startup Expo, July 31st at Comerica Center in Frisco. Meet technology startups from DFW, Texas, around the nation, and beyond. Noon to 8 p.m., including the showcase event at 5 p.m., a national pitch competition with over $100,000 in services to the winner that the crowd will choose. Register to attend at codelaunch.com. The 7th Annual Code Launch Startup Expo, July 31st at Comerica Center in Frisco.
For your free pass to attend Code Launch, enter code CL7 Next Level. That's CL7 Next Level.
Hey everybody, Bob Gibbons again with the Next Level Show. Thanks for joining us today. We're with Mike Kinder of Veryable, and we're talking about how he's creating a gig economy platform for workers in a manufacturing environment and the manufacturers that need them. And it's a cool variable, no pun there.
There you go.
Variable way to not only get work but also to find workers. So I think that's a cool thing. So whenever you said you'd been in manufacturing with GE, you saw the need for this in your personal plant management experience. How did that then translate into turning this into a tech company? Mm-hmm. What is your first step, your aha moment? How do you fund this thing?
Yeah, well, really the impetus was towards the end of my consulting career. I was building a partner track on the topic of digital manufacturing. And it was about 2015. And 2015 was when the buzzword war really started coming out with IoT, digital, augmented reality, all these things. And it was mostly a West Coast tech-forward push. And all of my clients are going, Mike, what the hell do I make of this IoT thing? I don't even know what that means. And these are big businesses. Fortune 100s are coming to saying, I don't know what to do with this. So I started to really get into that, like what is this, and what should they do with it? And what I uncovered was a couple things. Some were encouraging, some were not. And the encouraging thing is that the tech is actually pretty exciting. The discouraging fact is that nobody's doing it. Nobody. So all these IoT platforms out there, and last time I checked, there were over 400 of them, and there's probably doubled since the last time I checked. I can't tell you a single company that is really using an IoT platform in a proper way. Most of the companies that should be using them are actually selling them, right? So they're both, these industrial companies that are also selling into the IoT space. And then you go, hey, okay, that's cool. How many of your plants are actually using that? Well, none. You're selling this and you haven't totally adopted it. That doesn't make any sense.
Is that because it's mainly being sold to the consumer? Is it
No. It's a B2B, and so
okay.
It's saying, look, the proper use case would be the connected factory. So when you have an IoT, platform, in theory, what you can do is you can measure the flow of material, the location of material, the flow of people, machine productivity, like all these use cases that could bubble up at the factory level. But then you got the big players in industry that have many factories themselves, but they have solutions they're trying to sell to other manufacturers. Mm-hmm. And you're going, well, you might want to eat your own dog food here, to demonstrate that. So what I was noticing is a lot of great technology, but not a lot of adoption. I was trying to figure out why. Why is that the case when you've got augmented reality, 3D printing, IoT, what would other be? Robotics and automation, cobots, things like this that are super exciting. You see these at trade shows. You see them online. Nobody's interested in it, or at least nobody's adopting it. And the fact of the matter is there are just more fundamental problems that have to be solved. And the idea of knowing the vibration data on one piece of equipment in my plant just isn't that attractive when I don't have 100 people that I need, or I don't have the parts I need. So it's just a sequence of priorities. And then at the same time, it's hard to build a business case on the series of fractional operational improvements that you're going to get from an IoT platform that's going to cost you, a few $1 million at an enterprise level to buy. Right. So the CFO looks at that and goes, no, this is not a very clear business case. So anyway, I noticed there was just a lot of stagnation in the marketplace around this tech. So it was time to bring something to market that could at least draw or give a lot of this technology a reason to exist.
Yeah, interesting. So whenever you created this, were you a technologist? I mean, how did you know how to create an app to do this?
Oh, no, my co-founder, Noah, he's the technologist. So,
always good to have one of those guys.
Yeah, no, I'm the operations guy, and Noah's the technologist. So
you built this all in-house with your own people? You didn't outsource to some other shop?
In-house, yeah. We've got a killer team. It's Noah's a world-class CTO, and we've got just an absolute great tech team. So we've done it all in-house.
How long does it take to build something like this to where it's actually something you can really start using?
Well, it took us about 6 months to build the MVP. Now, Noah did most of that himself.
Minimum viable product.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we got it to a point where people call it the lean startup. Mm-hmm. I just call it pragmatism. You don't want to over-design something until you understand what the market wants, right? So you want to get it to a point where you can test it. And we had done enough validation, without a product, but just kind of conceptual validation up front to know that the market would want this. But then would the market want this, right? So it took us about 6 months to develop the MVP with Noah doing it more or less full time. And then taking it out to market, that's when we really realized that the market would want it. So we listened to a lot of the feedback and spent the next 6 months during our proof of concept phase in Dallas tweaking it based on what we heard.
Did you go to manufacturers first, or did you go to the labor pool first?
The labor pool first, yeah. Okay. So the third person in our company was Angie Turner. Angie, I've known Angie since we were very young. And I thought, okay, how do I take an app to market and before we actually have the marketplace functional?
Yeah.
So in order to attract a manufacturer, you have to be able to have a product with something behind the curtain.
That's the problem with the gig economy. I mean, just like Uber, you have to have the drivers, but you also have to have the customers. How do you get both those in a critical mass to where now you have something that's actually working?
Right. And so manufacturers aren't the type that are going to sit around and dream about what the future may hold. No, they need something now.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of time to wait.
Solve my problem.
Yeah. And I've got real world concerns, buddy. If you don't have something that's going to work for me now, get lost. So Angie was the third person in the company because I thought, okay, who do I know? Who do I know in my network that can take an app to market in the blue collar space on basically a promise. Okay, there's nothing yet, but there will be. If I recruit enough operators like you, then there will be something else. And Angie did that. Angie spent about 3 months all around the DFW area signing up for potential operators on a promise.
I mean, how does she find these people?
That's the magic of Angie.
Okay. So proprietary information. Okay.
Call it Angie magic.
So, it's funny because we had a guy on the show once by the name of Matt Monero, and his market was financing for truck drivers. Mm-hmm. And so he actually pulled a Suburban into a truck stop on a highway and just parked it and put a giant sign on the side of that vehicle and just said, "I'll finance your truck." And he just stood there and waited for people to show up. And it worked. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was some serious hustle to do that. So it's always going to where the people are in one way or another, whether that's digitally or in person, is what I see people having to do to just, burn the shoe leather, get out in front of them somehow.
Yeah, you got to. And, this is good advice for anybody that's looking to start a business, I think, is forget the buzzwords, bootstrapping or anything like that. But it's about doing what's necessary. And doing it in a pragmatic way. And so we've got stories like that, all over the map. Like, we used to put flyers on food trucks, the food trucks that would show up at manufacturing companies at lunchtime so that we could recruit the folks. Because we have not most, but about a third of our operators have full-time jobs. So that's a big demographic of ours, is to recruit manufacturing workers.
So you put it on the food truck as a flyer so that the person buying from the food truck can grab one of those flyers.
Right.
That's
and so,
excellent.
But I think the really relevant advice is, and maybe because I'm kind of a pessimist by nature, but things just don't work, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you don't snap your fingers and things work. And the fact that most things work that we're accustomed to is a freaking miracle.
Yeah.
And it's an absolute miracle. It's a testament to the human spirit. You have so many people working so hard on their specific domain expertise in order just to get things to work. So if you expect things to work, you're either naive or misguided. You have to expect that things won't work. And you have to get down into the weeds, roll up your sleeves and get into it and make it work. So you put your things on food trucks. You get out there and you hustle. You talk to people. You do everything necessary, because unless you do that, it's just not going to work.
And then on the manufacturer side, are you really focused on the HR people?
No.
The plant manager? I mean,
the ops folks.
The ops people.
The ops folks. Because at the end of the day, there's the people that are on the hook for results are the ops folks.
Yeah.
And these are the guys that are working Saturdays and Sundays to push out that last unit to make their numbers for the quarter. It's not the HR folks.
Right.
So it's the guys that have the most to gain and take most of the blame are the ones that we go after. So
do you roll this out on a market by market basis? So DFW first and then others later?
Yeah, yes, I think that's right. We're mostly in the Southwest and Southeast right now. Our beachhead is Texas, but we're in a bunch of Southeast markets and what you'd call the Southwest markets too. But we're only doing that to maintain the balance on a lot of different dimensions. But standing up each local marketplace is getting that balance right is important.
And I imagine as you get one market sort of humming along and you're ready to go into another market, your strategy to go into that market is getting more and more refined every time you do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what's taking you into other markets? Is it your desire to be in that market, or is it the manufacturer who is already in the DFW market using you and they happen to have a plant in Atlanta?
All the above. I mean, there's others, but those are two biggies. I mean, we expansion on the back of some of our big users. That's important to us. I mean, it's one, it's a good strategy, but two, it's a good sign for the business. So when we have a lot of big global distributors or big global manufacturers that are saying, "Hey, how quickly can you be in Chicago?" Mm-hmm. That's a good sign for us. So not only is it good for the business, but it's we want to allow them to maximize their value potential.
What does 3 years look like from now?
A lot of change, I can tell you that much.
Just much bigger, many more markets. I mean, do you see yourself going into other segments besides just manufacturing?
No. Well, so when I use the term manufacturing, I would bucket distribution, fulfillment, logistics. So
what about
core
the trades,
operations,
like construction trades, that kind of thing?
No. So
Because I would think that would be an obvious, and we've got like 20 seconds, so
Yeah.
I'm sorry to ask.
No, I mean, this is probably an awkward place to leave on, but I think what labor always specializes along verticals
Okay.
and horizontals. So I don't see a ton of value in expansion across verticals when my vertical is worth $1 trillion.
Yeah, I got you. All right, we're going to have to leave it there. What a great conversation. We could go on another hour, but thanks so much, Mike, for being with us. Listeners, please go to Veryable Ops, with Very being V-E-R-Y, variableops.com, and check us out on the show, thenextlevel.show.com, or look us up on YouTube and podcast under The Next Level Show. Be back next week with another great guest.
Thanks, Bob.
Bye.